Good morning. What's up? Ready to rock and roll. I am pumped. I am excited because guess what? King Eric is in the house, right? I was going to put on my button down and jacket, which I'm going to do for my next ISSA CISO presentation, right? Nothing but CISO today, right? But today's an awesome day. Already got in my workout, heavy chest and tricep day. Then I have this, one of my favorite parts. Then I have another ISSA presentation. Then I head to LIX and I'll fly home, right? So a busy day. And guess what? It's only 7 a.m., right? So question, who beat me up this morning? I've been up since 4 a.m. Pacific time. So who got me? Now, I know some of you internationally are going to be like, dude, I never went to sleep, right? You've been up the whole time. So awesome. Yeah, I am traveling. You can always tell by the background whether I'm home or traveling, but I love the energy. We already have eight questions that keep popping in. You guys are on the ball. Today's prize goes to Talon Biz 23, right? It's hard with the handles to know the full names, but we got one right away. First one in about 20 minutes ago. So awesome. Good morning, Dr. Cole. Because of you, I have gotten a second interview with the top dog for CISO. What does he need to hear? First, I want to pause. I can give you advice. I can help you. I can guide you. But guess what? You have to show up, and you're the one that's swinging the bat, and you're the one that has to hit the ball. So I appreciate the acknowledgement, but I just want to be clear. It's not because of me. It's because of you, right? You've shown up, Talon Biz, right? You're the one who did the work. You're the one who listened to the advice, trusted me, and took action. So I do appreciate that call up, but I want to make sure you're giving yourself a lot of credit because there's a lot of people that like to sit on the sidelines, right? I always tell folks is I can tell you what to do, right? I can give you the secrets, but you have to go and take the first step. You have to take the action. You have to trust yourself. And most important, which I can tell you did because you got that second interview, is you actually believed and trusted in yourself, right? That's the most important thing because I can tell you to do something, but if you're like, okay, I'm going to do what Eric said, but it's not going to work. It's not going to work. It's not going to work, right? So you got to have that belief that's there. So awesome. So excellent. So what do you need to hear? That you understand and know the business. Essentially, they want to look for two things. One is, did you do your homework? Did you actually research the company? Now, this, you want to be careful because you want to show that you did your homework and you want to show that you researched. But you don't want to come across that you are the authoritative expert on the company because guess what? He or she, the second top dog, knows more about the company than you. So I just want to give that little warning because I've seen a couple of people, they go in almost to, let me tell you about your company, right? It's like, no, right? But you do want to just fit in, hey, I did some research on the company. I'd love to hear more from you. But from what I can see, it looks like you're doing about 300 million. And I think with some proper cybersecurity, we can actually potentially stabilize and increase that. And I'd love to also look at some of the profit margins to see if there's additional things we can do on security to be able to improve that. So right there, it shows, okay, here you did your homework. You know the general financials for the company, and you can speak the language, right? Use the word margins, right, is another word for profitability, right? Revenues, some of those general terms out there, they're going to be like, okay, this person understands and gets it. So that's the first thing they're really going to look for is, did you do research? Are you just coming in generic, or did you actually do some homework on us to see what's going on? Second is they're really going to see if there's a match of personality. So this is one where you want to research the second dog a little bit, so to see their interests, their hobbies, things like that, and if appropriate, so to sort of, hey, I see that you really like skiing. It looks like you just got back from Aspen, and I tell you, I enjoy, or I've never been skiing, but I'd love to try it. You really want to build that rapport with them as quickly as possible. Then you want to show you understand the business, and be ready if they ask for, hey, what would you do? What would you do for your first 30 or 60 or 90 days? And say, first of all, the most important thing I find with cyber is you need to understand the business. I see a lot of CISOs, they want to come in with a lot of ideas and change everything. While I do have a lot of ideas, I also recognize that you've had a successful company and a CISO needs to align and integrate with the company. So I want to understand what's being done, understand what's working, understand challenges. And then once I understand everything, then I'll start to see how we can integrate a custom plan into your organization that actually meets and aligns with what you're doing. Once again, give them, okay, this person gets it. They're not going to create chaos. They're not going to go nuts here. They're really going to understand and take action. And then I'd even follow up with a question. Hey, is there any current immediate needs that you think the organization has, or current issues or problems with cyber that you'd like me to address immediately? So what you're doing is you're turning the interview into a conversation. Instead of them just drilling you with questions, you're like, boom, 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 boom. You answer it, and then you ask them a question, right? And then they're engaging, and it's much more conversation, because then they're going to leave going, wow, this person is great to talk to. They're comfortable. They're easy. So those are sort of the big tips and tricks of what they want to hear, is that you understand the business. You're not going to come in and disrupt everything. You can speak the language. You understand security, and you're going to integrate well with the team and have a good personality. Those are really the key things they're looking for there. They're not, I mean, if they ask you some technical stuff, you can cover it, but it's not going to be a technical interview. They're not going to sit there and go, what's a firewall? How do you configure it? Well, it's much more on, are you going to work well? Are you open? Do you have some ideas, but are you also going to understand the business and basically integrate, as opposed to create conflict or chaos in the business? That's really, as the higher up you go in the organization, what they're really going to be looking for there. So definitely keep me posted. I'd love to hear how you do on that. You can either drop me an email or on social. I'd love to see how that goes. And other last thing, when you're speaking about the company and the job, use we and present tense. So don't go in and say, I mean, at your company, and if I get the job, I'm going to do X. Go, at our company, and when I'm CISO, I'm going to do this. I know it sounds subtle, but it's basically little messages to them that, okay, this person's already owning and being part of the team, and planting the seeds that this person is the CISO, right? It's those little mental things that can sometimes be the difference that makes the difference. Because if you keep saying your company and if, they're thinking, okay, maybe this isn't a good match. But if you're saying, I mean, when we work together at the company, and when I'm CISO, here's what I'll do. They're like, okay, that actually sounds good, right? You're planting the seed that you already have that job, and convincing them that you're the right candidate for the job. And the next one, forgot to say thank you. You've given me so many tools to use in my dailies and ISM. God says you will hear my words, and you, sir, are speaking them. Thank you, my friend. That means a lot. I do appreciate that feedback and that comments, because like I said, believe when everyone is created, they have a unique purpose. And I believe my purpose is to help people secure cyberspace and the suffering in cyberspace. And it all starts with helping, supporting CISOs, and building a large number of CISOs. So do appreciate that feedback. Darren is in the house. Good morning, Dr. Cole. Does your CISO training apply for people who want to become government CISOs, or is it more private sector focused? Yes. So it really covers CISO. So there's a core part of being a CISO is being a CISO, right? Some of the mindset, some of the aspects, some of those components are all the same. And then we do have some sections on public sector and some sections on private sector. The one thing I do want to sort of give you a warning is, I sort of view government as a little different than many people do. Government still has budgets, right? They still spend money They still have to meet budgets. So I talk about governments as basically like a nonprofit business. Right? They're not focused on profit, but they still have to deliver a service. There's still a cost for that service. There's still reputational damage, right, if they don't deliver that service. And they still have to go in and essentially get that money from, depending on the agency, it could be from Congress, right, the president, or another entity. So you still have customers. You still have customers that you have to serve and make happy that give you money. Now, the customer might not be a consumer, it might not be an individual business, right? But you still have customers that you have to support. I mean, one of the examples is the IRS. They have customers that are paying them money. That's taxpayers, you and me, right? IRS is basically, it has a B2C arm where it actually provides a service to individuals who pay taxes, and it has a B2B arm, which is companies that pay taxes, right? So I still look at it in that framework. So I tend to, instead of seeing them as very different as public and private, I view them as very, very similar. It's just one has to make a profit and the other one doesn't, but they still have customers. They're still getting revenue. They still have to meet budgets, right? They still have to meet requirements. There's still reputational damage, and there's still all those other aspects of it. So the answer is yes, I cover both, but I just wanted to give you the heads up that I take both through that similar lens of, hey, there's still financials that need to be understood. You still need to understand how much money, right, a government agency is still having a revenue number, right? It might be 3 billion, it might be 4. Now that's might be either what you get like with the IRS through taxes or what Congress gives you. But the point is, you still have a general revenue number. Now, you don't have margins of profit, but you're still going to have the general revenue. And to me, that's still a mindset of a CISO. And that's where I think a lot of government cybersecurity and CISOs get into trouble, where they're like, oh, there's no money, there's no finances. This isn't like a commercial organization. I don't need to worry about any of that. And that's where they get themselves in trouble. You absolutely do. You don't have unlimited money. You can't spend whatever you want. There are budgets, right? There are restrictions. There are all those factors in place. So I tend to cover it, but I tend to make them more similar than many organizations like to make them more different. Annabelle, I am at a software company. InfoSec is excluded from product reviews. How do you convince the product side of the business to include the InfoSec team of their decisions into the product? So a couple ways to do this. One is, let's just ask some simple questions here. Why does somebody involve you, or why does somebody not involve you in a given project? If somebody involves you in a project, it's usually because you add value. It's usually because you add benefit. If you don't include somebody in a project, it's either because they don't provide value or benefit, or even worse, they cause damage or issues or roadblocks or frustration. So first question is, what is the impression of cybersecurity with the product teams? Why are they not including you? Is it because when they have in the past, you've always been a roadblock? You've always made things more difficult and I don't see value in it? Or is it just neutral, where they don't see the benefit or the value of including you? So that's one aspect you want to look at. How can you provide value? How can you make it so when you're in that room, they're like, wow, this would not have been as successful and would not have done as well if we didn't have security present. So that's really that first message there. So that's one aspect of it, which I call sort of more of the bottom-up grassroots approach of they should want to include you, right? They should want to involve you because you have benefit and you have value to add, and you want them to see that and you want to show that to them. That's ideal scenario. But then there's also a top-down. they shouldn't get to decide. Right? So if your company is focused on security and they see the value of security and understand the importance of it, that should not be a negotiable. It should have to involve security. And if they don't involve security, there should be issues and repercussions and they should get in trouble for it. So there's the other side of the coin, which is they shouldn't have a choice. So I'm hearing if they don't involve you and they don't have to involve you, and there's no repercussions for them not involving you, that there's a disconnect at the top. The executives don't understand the value and importance of security because they don't demand or cause these project teams to do that. If your executives really understood the impact of not involving security, if they really understood what the damage could be to the company, they would basically, from the top, put out a regulation saying, listen, just like legal must be involved in any decision, just like finance or procurement must be involved if you're going to spend money, if you're doing anything with software or development, cybersecurity has to be involved. You don't have a choice. If you want to work at this company, that is a non-negotiable. And if you don't like that, that's okay. But that's not going to be tolerated here, and you need to work somewhere else. So that's the other side of the coin, that you need to also do a lot of socialization at the top level, because it's clearly showing me that the executives aren't bought in. And if the executives aren't bought in, then the middle management and lower end management are not going to be on board either. So I would sort of take that mixed bottom up approach. How can you convince the teams you add value so they want to include you? And then top down approach, how can you get the executives so on board and dialed in that the teams don't really have a choice? They have to include you because it's part of the corporate requirements and it's how your company does business. Cybersecurity is always integrated into the process. So Keith, good morning from Louisiana. All right. How's the weather down there? Right? I always think Louisiana down south, it's warm, but I know sometimes you guys can get some cold spells. Also, I'm actually heading in a week or so to Tennessee, so I got to check and see what the weather was. The last time I went there, I show up with my short sleeve shirt and ready to go, and it was like 20 degrees outside in Tennessee. I'm like, okay, I got to check the weather before I travel. So good morning, good morning, good morning. Question is, what type of documentation are CISOs responsible for on a daily basis? Yes. Awesome question. So CISOs are responsible at a base level for documenting the security policies and procedures for the organization. So the general security policies that everybody needs to follow or specific businesses need to follow, all of that needs to be fully documented. Then any of the SOPs, standard operating procedures, incident response, how do you handle an incident? Who do you call? What is the process? That has to all be documented. How do you harden servers? What is the process for looking at and checking for new patches? How do you test the patch? How do you determine or verify whether you should apply the patch? What is the time frame for applying the patch? All of that needs to be documented. Vulnerability scanning. How often do you do vulnerability scanning? How do you determine which vulnerabilities to fix and which ones are acceptable? How do you go in and document and track the closure of it? So this is the area that a lot of security folks, especially technical people, ignore and don't see the value of it. Everything you do in cybersecurity needs to be documented. There needs to be a process, there needs to be checks, there needs to be validation, and you need to make sure you follow it. And there's a few reasons for it. One is, if the only knowledge of how processes and procedures are done is up here, and that person leaves either expectedly or unexpectedly, you're in a whole lot of trouble. And I see this all the time. I come into organizations and I'm like, how are you doing that? And they're like, well, Dave did it for 10 years and Dave left. So we're sort of trying to figure it out. And we're like, well, why didn't Dave document it? And then here's the biggest mistake. Well, When Dave gave his 2 weeks notice, we asked Dave to document everything, and he didn't really do a good job. Of course he didn't. When somebody decides to leave, right, they're checked out. They're not going to do an amazing job. Or my favorite one is, oh yeah, we fired Dave, but we said before you leave, can you document what you did? Really? You really thought that was a good plan, right? You really thought that was going to work and he was going to be cooperative. You just fired him, right? You just let him go from the company unexpectedly. So you need to integrate it into the process as people go in and do that. But you go, but Eric, security people don't like to document. So two answers to that. One is, great. Have a program manager, have a documenter, have a technical writer, have somebody follow them around to do that. Trust me, it's going to be cheaper and quicker to do that. If you look at what your hourly rate is for a technical person and what an hourly rate of a technical writer is, it's much cheaper to have somebody else generate and do that documentation. Oh, but Eric, they're not going to cooperate. You know what the easiest and best way to get people to cooperate is? Money, money, money. Make it one of their KPIs, key performance indicators. At the end of the year, when we go in and do your review and determine whatever the compensation is, whether it's a bonus or a raise or any of those factors, 25% is going to be based on the documentation of your job. If there's good, clear documentation, then you get 25%. If you don't, you don't. In some cases, you might want to make it even higher. You might want to say this year, 50%, half of your bonus or half of your potential raise is tied to the documentation of your job. So if at the end of the year, we don't have documentation and it's not clear, then you don't get 50% of that bonus. And you need to stick with it and show them that you're serious, and that will also drive change. This is an area where just because it's not fun or somebody doesn't like it doesn't mean they have a right not to do it. I run into this a lot with cybersecurity, where because there's so much to do and so busy, essentially the security engineers and security folks, they're only doing what they want to do. They're only doing what's fun. Well, that's not how it works. If we're paying you to do a job, you do the job. Some of it's fun, some of it's not fun. Some of it's great, some of it's a little boring. But guess what? You do all of it. You don't get to choose. You don't get to say, well, I don't want to do that piece, so I'm not, right? That's not how it works when you're being paid. So we need to do a better job of clearly defining rules and regulations. Now, I'm glad you asked this question because this is becoming a lot more important with the new regulation. If you're in the US, you said Louisiana, and there is the federal privacy laws that are coming out. And the biggest thing with those laws, and it's the same thing with PCI and GDPR and everything else, it doesn't matter what you're actually doing. Can you prove it with documentation? This is where we help a lot of companies on the credit card PCI space because they go, Eric, we are doing the dirty dozen. We are doing PCI, but our auditor came in and failed us. And this is BS. It's gone. I'm like, no, you have no proof. But Eric, we told them that doesn't mean anything. Where is the proof? Where is the documentation? So the general rule with regulations and everything else is if it's not written, if you can't prove it, if you can't show it's being done, then it's not happening. It's not occurring. So documentation will continue to be a key role, and it absolutely is the responsibility of a CISO, even though many people tend to think it's not. So Zach, thoughts on zero trust? Something needed, marketing fluff, or do people just need to do a better job at the base of security? Yes, I agree with all of those. So I joke. Zero trust, we basically have given a clever word to something that we've been doing in security for 20 years. And then all of a sudden it has this cool word, zero trust, right? And then we get all this marketing hype and fluff and a lot of other things around it. And, oh, we got to do this, zero trust, zero trust, zero trust. And nobody knows what it is, I go up to that all the time with these people at conferences, and you either love me or you hate me because yeah, you either know your stuff or you don't. But there was a panel where they're all talking about, oh, the criticality of zero trust. Zero trust is the future, blah, blah, blah. And I happened to be in the audience and I raised my hand and I knew several of the panelists and they cringed because they know I never ask easy questions. I said, can we just go on each of the panelists? And I want a one sentence definition. Can you tell me what zero trust is? And it was like I gave somebody in kindergarten a complex algebraic problem that they had no understanding of how to solve. It was just like it was just like right. It was just like crazy. Nobody was able to give a definition, right? So let's start there. Zero trust is simply least privilege. Zero trust is about giving an entity the least amount of access it needs to do its job. Now, if you go back and look at any of my teachings, my courses, my books, or any other books out there, least privilege is not a new concept. It's something we've always talked about. You give somebody the least amount of access they need to do their job. Plain and simple, nothing more, nothing less. That's really all zero trust is. But we've now created this complex environment, and now all of a sudden, because there's executive orders that any government agency must have a plan for zero trust and all this stuff, there's now all this fluff. And here's the thing: whenever money's involved, everybody wants to jump in on it. But at the end of the day, yes, least privilege is important. Controlling and minimizing least privilege to access is important. And to me, it's at different levels of granularity. So it's basic security. So that's why I said everything you said, it's needed. Yes. Is it marketing fluff? Yes. Is it just a basic understanding of security? Yes. So to me, you start off one aspect of zero trust, which is real simple. If somebody can compromise an application on your computer, it shouldn't impact any other applications, and it shouldn't impact any other computers. That's just good least privilege. That's good isolation. That's good control. If a computer gets compromised, it shouldn't be able to access any other computer on the network. If somebody gets access to one data record, they shouldn't be able to access any other data records, right? So it's just to me good basic security. And if zero trust, what we're calling it, or least privilege, was in place, it would stop a lot of the attacks. Now, with that said, great CISOs, world-class CISOs, understand market, understand business, and understand opportunities. So when I work with clients or when I go into clients or when I'm doing vCISO work, do I take advantage of the zero trust buzzword? Absolutely. If it's going to help me get budget and help secure the organization and convince people that we need to spend money in a certain area because an executive order talks about zero trust, yeah, I'll play the game. But I'm going to play the game correctly to actually implement the real technical solution, which is least privilege. So I'm not saying you should sit there and just walk around, oh, zero trust, a bunch of BS. It's just a fluff, and you're not going to play that game. No, if there's a way that you could play the game to help you get resources so you can secure the organization and ultimately do your job, play the game. Right. So it's sort of a mixed message there, but I think you get the idea that yes, it's a buzzword that's overused, but if it's something that people are getting on the bandwagon, throwing money behind, and you can help get better least privilege, because least privilege doesn't sound near as cool as zero trust, right? You should use it in order to secure the organization, but it's really just good, sound security practices. Good morning. Sorry. The screen scrolls. So where I was and where we're at is, let me make sure I don't miss any questions. There's my zero. Okay. How do we quantify the risk in view of opting the cyber insurance? Let's just step back for a second. How do you quantify the risk of regular insurance? So let's not even get to cyber, because regular insurance is a proven, valid, sound industry with predictive modeling done very, very well. So how do you do the risk of whether somebody, and just to be clear, we're all safe drivers, None of us are going to get into any accidents. We're all healthy. None of us are going to have illnesses. So I want to make sure when I talk here, I don't inadvertently confess something over you. No, no, we're all safe. This is just merely an example to make the point. But how do you quantify the risk of whether somebody will get into an accident? How do we quantify the risk of whether somebody will live or die? Right? It comes down to you estimate. You estimate based on two factors. Talk to any insurance person, and they will tell you in traditional world, it's all about historical data and comparative data. So they're going to look at your health. They're going to look at other people, males in their 50s who live in the Northeast, and they're going to use that to come up with an estimate. And that estimate is going to be there's a 80% chance that this could happen, and therefore to minimize that, it's going to be $10,000 a year for a $2 million policy. And they do those same things. For some reason, when we move into cyber insurance, we want to change all the rules. We want it to be exact. We want it to be numeric. It's got to be proved. That's not how risk works. That's not how insurance works. You're predicting the future. You're being a magic genie. You're looking into your crystal ball and saying, what is the probability of things happening in the future? That's what risk is about. And it's not an exact science. You're not going to have exact numbers, but what you do is you look at historical data for the company. And by the way, the less historical data you have, the more risk. So if you have less data on somebody, it's a high risk. That's why when an 18-year-old starts driving, their insurance is much, much, much higher than somebody who's been driving for 20 years with a safe record, because we don't know. We don't know. They might be the safest driver on the planet. They might be the worst driver on the planet. But because we don't have any data, because they've been driving for 2 weeks, we have to assume worst case and it's higher. So if it's a company where you don't have historical data, then you're going to go in and make the risk higher. If you have more data, you make it lower. And then you look at comparative data. Most 18-year-olds aren't the safest because they're new and they haven't necessarily been trained the best. So there are some very safe 18 drivers, and I know all of our drivers are super safe if we have kids, but a lot of them are not. So once again, that's higher risk. So therefore, we would make that higher. So once again, you're looking at cyber insurance. If it's a hospital, there's not a ton of historical data. They might only have 4 or 5 years. And hospitals in general, because they have older technology, older operating systems and can't necessarily patch, they tend to have more vulnerabilities and attacks. So that's why insurance for a hospital is going to be much higher. So we just use the same principles that we do in regular insurance and just apply it to cybersecurity. So that's how we quantify it. Look at the historical data, look at the comparative data, and the less data you have, the higher the risk that it's going to be. And then you have to go in and estimate. It's not an exact science. It's not a math problem. You have to estimate what the percent is and what the dollar value is. And it's an estimate based on those two numbers and values, just like we do in regular insurance. If I enjoy AI and cybersecurity, is that a good area to jump into for the future by starting my own company? So generally, yes. But as a friend, that's too general. So give it some more thought. What is the actual problem you're going to solve? Why is AI with cybersecurity the best way to solve it? And what's going to be your unique differentiator in the market? And Blaze and I highly recommend, if you haven't read Blue Ocean Strategy, read that book. That'll give you a good idea of what I'm talking about here. Because what you want, the problem is a lot of people go, oh, I like this and this. And they start a company, but they don't know what the problem is they're trying to solve. And here's the question. If you don't know the problem, you're trying to solve? How will your customers know the problem? And if your customers can't understand the problem, how are they going to give you money? So when you say starting a business, how are you going to make money? How are you going to generate revenue? What are you going to sell? And if you're going to sell something, it needs to be able to solve a problem. And if you're going to be able to solve a problem, it has to do it in a unique way that people will pay for. So generally, yes, if I'm coaching you, which I am right now, I would encourage you to go down that path. But before you quit your job, start a company, you have a lot more, or not a lot more, but you have some more work to do in terms of what is the problem? Why is AI cybersecurity unique or the best way to solve it? What is your actual solution or product? And how is it unique or different from anything else in the marketplace? So definitely do a little more work on that. But yes, in terms of are you heading down a good path? Yes, but there's a lot more work to do before you actually start the company. So I've been all over uh, Chat GDP lately, but I notice it's not a super tool. It just does things faster if you know exactly what you're looking for. And the question was, Zach, Chat GPT. I'm always going to be honest with you. I'm not sure what ChatGPT is. So if it's something I should, I'm going to research it after the call, and I might go, duh, or I might know what it was, but it's being used as a different term. So I'll get back to you on that. That's not something that registers in my mind. I'm not sure what ChatGPT is. So if it's a new tool or you have some info or things like that, definitely share it with me. Otherwise, I'll do some research on the plane, and I'll get back to you next week with some more detail on that. Curious to see V4 and what it's capable of doing once connected to the internet to reference current info. Okay. I'm not sure if that's still a GPT question. I'm not sure what you mean by V4, Zach. So if it's related to that, like I said, I'll get back to you all next week on it. Otherwise, if you can give me a little more detail on it, that'd be great. Okay, it looks like there's a lot going back. Okay, so I think actually that brings us to about 40 minutes, which is how long we go. Okay, so in your opinion, the hard work for starting a business is way worth it in the long run? Absolutely. I believe that it is an experience that everyone should have. Everyone at some point in their life should start a business and be an entrepreneur. We all have it in us. We should all give it a chance. Some love it, some hate it, but it's sort of one of those things that, hey, you should give it a try. You should give it a try out there because, yes, it's a lot of hard work, but there's also a lot of value and a lot of benefit that you get out of it. Right? In my mind, working for somebody else, you're going to do well, but you are never going to do exceptional unless they give you ownership, right? You get percent, you get all those other options. The best way to really build legacy, and I believe everyone does have the ability to build legacy, is by having, running, and starting your own company. That's really the key there, because most of us think of how many companies or organizations where you've made other people very rich, where you've come up with great ideas, brilliant ideas. It's brought in a ton of money to the company based on your brilliant ideas, and you get pennies on the dollar, right? You don't get a whole lot. Nothing against MBAs. People always go, Eric, why are you anti-MBA? I'm not. To me, MBAs are the most brilliant people on the planet. Think of what an MBA does. Somebody with an MBA, they go out and they find brilliant people with brilliant ideas. They hire them at the company, paying them a pretty good salary. And then they basically take their ideas, make millions, and they give the individual 5 or 6% of it, and they take the other 90. It's brilliant, right? It's brilliant on that front. But here's the ironic part. All the MBA did was organize, analyze. Now, there's a lot to running a business. There's a lot of models out there. And MBAs be like, Eric, there's a lot of, yes, I'm not downplaying that. But the point is, I think they would all agree, the MBAs do not generate the ideas that generate the revenue. But they take most of it. Right? MBAs usually are paid much, much better than the technical people that are salaried in the organization. Right? So it's just something to think about. Something that you should try. You can do it part-time, you can do it full-time, but I do believe that everyone should at some point at least test, validate, or try being it, because you have genius in you. You have brilliant ideas. Why not if you're going to earn $1, why not take $1? Why are you giving 90% to somebody else? So yes, I'm very big on empowering technical people to be entrepreneurs, right? So I'm very, very big on that. And if you listen to or track or do any of my coaching, I'm always going to ask you questions around it. Now, if you don't want it, you don't want it. But here's the real question. Is it you don't want to? Or is it you're afraid? Oh, but Eric, what if it fails? What if it doesn't work? What does it do good? Let me ask you a question. Who would you rather bet on? Yourself or somebody else? Because look at what's happening. How many jobs did Amazon just lay off? I think it was a couple thousand. All these big companies are laying off people because the executives or MBAs didn't do their job. So check this out. You say you want to be safe and you want to work for another company and you want to be salaried so you have good security for your family. And when those people running the company don't do a good job and make mistakes, they don't fire themselves. They don't look at the bonuses that Amazon executives are making. They're laying off thousands of people that created the revenue, yet they're still getting their bonus. I mean, that's sort of a broken model. So today there is no job security. Today, all you're doing is who you're betting on. Are you betting on other executives to run the company correctly? And if they do a bad job, they're going to let you go anyway. So there's really no job security. Or are you going to bet on yourself to run the company and make good decisions? That's really what it comes down to. Who do you want to bet on? Who do you want to bet your family and your future on? Now, with that said, be smart about it. What I always tell folks is get a number. So if you want to go and start your own business and you have kids and all those responsibilities, you do have responsibility. So you don't want to be stupid here, but say, okay, if I had 200K in the bank, then I would feel comfortable to go out because then I could start the company. And if it doesn't work, I can get another job. Great. So make it a goal that in X years, you're going to save 200K. You don't need to get that new BMW. You don't need to get all those other things. Right? Just save up to 200K. Just change your lifestyle a little bit. Let me tell you, whether you're driving a 30K or an 80K automobile, doesn't drastically change your lifestyle. But that's 50K right there. Right? So just change your mindset. And if being an entrepreneur is really, really important, then just shift your priorities. Focus on saving, building up that nest egg so you have the comfort and ability to be able to give it a try. Which, by the way, that wasn't where I planned on going today, but I'll always go there based on where the questions take me. So I hope this was helpful. Hope you enjoyed this episode. As always, please pass on the word. If you're enjoying what we're doing, please tell others. Please tell them to join us. Please tell us about our podcast. Like I said, I'm on a mission to reach as many people as possible. And if you're enjoying the content, if you can pass that on, I would truly, truly appreciate that. Otherwise, have an amazing week. And we'll see you all next week with some great questions and some great conversations. So thank everyone for showing up, and I'll talk to you soon.